Hi everyone and welcome to Ask a Property Manager episode number 79. Today is November 17th, 2021. We're coming to you from Studio 2.0 here at Own Buffalo. I'm Andrew Schultz, principal broker of Own Buffalo Inc. And on today's show, we're going to be talking about what to do when a contractor drops a tree limb on your house. We're going to talk about a Long Island man who's finally been foreclosed and evicted after 23 years of squatting. We're going to answer some questions from housing providers around the country and so much more. And before we do all of that, we're going to go ahead and plug our social media. New episodes of Ask a Property Manager drop every Wednesday, 10 a.m. Eastern. You can catch those live on Facebook. You can catch the replay the same day, both Facebook and YouTube. Don't forget about our Instagram. We post content there that doesn't make it to our other platforms. And last but not least, don't forget about the Rent Prep for Landlords podcast. New episode of the podcast drops tomorrow on Thursday. This week, we're going to be talking about what to do when a tenant loses their job, renting to traveling professionals, and accepting an applicant's financial aid as a source of income. So it's an interesting episode. Don't miss out on that. New episodes of the Rent Prep for Landlords podcast drop every other Thursday morning, anywhere podcasts are heard, or over at rentprep.com/podcast. We're going to go ahead and jump into our news of the day here, starting with this article out of the New York Post. This is reported on November 13th, just a couple days ago. Long Island mortgage deadbeat finally booted after 23 years. And I believe that we've reported on this gentleman in the past, but this story is finally coming to a close here. The free ride is finally over for a Long Island man who went more than 2 decades without paying a penny on his mortgage while courts failed to evict him. Mr. Hansball, 52, bought the 3-bedroom, 2.5-bath East Meadow home in October of 1998 for $290,000 with $58,000 down. He made the first mortgage payment of $1,602 and then never paid again. The house was foreclosed on in 2000. Over the years, he's filed 4 lawsuits and 7 bankruptcies, cases which automatically pause any attempt to evict. He even claimed COVID-19 financial hardship, court records show. Other occupants of the Kenmore Street house also filed for bankruptcy along the way, as the house legally changed hands from one bank to another, and finally to an investor, all of whom tried in vain to get Hansball out. Time and again, law enforcement officers would show up to boot the deadbeat residents, only to be confronted with court documents giving him one more chance. Hansball, who frequently represented himself in court and has used different lawyers, would then abandon most, if not all, the court actions he began, defaulting or failing to show up for the hearings. That all changed on Friday morning when Nassau County Sheriff's deputies descended on the 2-story corner home to change the locks 2 months after Judge William Hohauser ruled that Hansball was in the home illegally. It was actually the second time authorities attempted to oust him since the September 14th decision. A U-Haul truck appeared in the driveway days ahead of the planned October 29th eviction. At the time, Hansball declined to comment to the Post, but the bid to clear out the freeloaders last month was scuttled when a purported resident, Parmjeet Poir, I'm going to pronounce that wrong and I apologize, ran to court on an emergency basis, claiming he had no place to go. Please stop the eviction for 30 days only, according to a legal document. Hohauer waited 19 days to hold a hearing on the request, but Poir did not show up in court Tuesday to plead his case, and the judge prompting the judge to note the residents of the East Meadow home never appear in court, adding that there's a jaundiced eye after 23 years. I don't know if he actually exists. Half a dozen Nassau County Sheriff's officers showed up just before 8 a.m. Friday with a locksmith and movers in tow. After knocking on the doors and getting no response, they entered. Movers worked for about 3.5 hours, removing the contents of the home: a stained couch, mattresses, box springs, broken down IKEA shelving, chairs, a stove, a tire, and a child's electric truck. Current owner Diamond Ridge Partners purchased the home from Chase Bank in May 2018 for $184,000 and offered Hansball $20,000 to leave. That's called a cash for keys. Instead, Hansball filed bankruptcy twice more. 2 other residents also claimed bankruptcy after Diamond Ridge bought the house. When one of the home's occupants, Bhagwat Shrichwala, 32, died in a Long Island Expressway crash this summer, a lawyer even argued the dead man's estate should qualify for protection from eviction, even though legally tenancy rights end when someone dies. Hansball didn't do anything wrong, said a lawyer who recently represented him. This is the great American legal system. A man can stay in a house with 1 mortgage payment, and he did not do anything illegal in all those 23 years, attorney William Friedman claimed. He's the poster child for a system that failed. How does that guy have a license to practice law? He took advantage of the system. He used it, and you're blaming him for being bad for using the system. I don't buy that. He's not a bad guy. The system is bad. He played by the rules. The system is completely broken, every damn bit of it. I don't know if I would be able to mount that defense if I was an attorney. I don't think I could do it. It's unclear where Hansel or the other occupants relocated. The belongings will go into storage for 30 days, paid for by Diamond Ridge. Company attorney Jordan Katz said, "It's a long time coming," Katz said of the eviction. "While this is a victory for us and we're grateful for the ruling issued by the judge, in a sense it's too little too late and the damage has been done," Max Sold of Diamond Ridge told the Post, adding, "I am disappointed that this individual was allowed to lie, cheat, and steal from hardworking taxpayers for greater than 23 years. We'll be lucky if we even break even," said Diamond Ridge owner Jason Epstein, who was on the hand to witness the eviction. "I expected it would take about a year and a half and about $50,000. It took 3 years and about 3 times that amount, plus the taxes for 3 years, which we had to pay. The company plans to renovate and repair the home and then will likely sell it. The experience has served as a hard lesson," Epstein said. The New York State judicial system is a tragedy of errors that allowed a derelict to leech off of the hardworking tax-paying constituents for 23 years, he said. "The fact that this man could cynically distort the laws to show how perversely tilted the playing field is in favor of scam artists who reign free and are able to commit fraud without consequence." So there you have it. 23 years. It took 23 years to get this guy out after he had been... he purchased the home. He did legally purchase the home. He put a down payment down. He made one mortgage payment, and then it took 23 years to get him out of the home. Typically, a foreclosure in New York State takes 24 to 36 months, 2 to 3 years from beginning to end. Right now, we're under a foreclosure moratorium here in the state of New York, which obviously has extended a lot of those foreclosure deadlines and things like that, timelines. But wow, I just can't believe 23 years it took. This guy was able to work the system for 23 years and stay in that home for 23 years before he was ultimately finally foreclosed on and evicted. Foreclosed on in 2000, I think it said. Yeah, foreclosed on in 2000, and then it took 21 years to actually get the eviction. Absolute insanity. This article comes to us from U.S. News and World Report. Unfortunately, it's a little bit of a downer, but I wanted to report on this anyway. Woman receives life for role in killing of real estate agent. This is out of Minneapolis. A former probation officer was sentenced Tuesday to life in prison for her role in the kidnapping and killing of a Minneapolis real estate agent. A Hennepin County jury in September found Elsa Segura, 29, of Fridley, guilty of aiding and abetting premeditated first-degree murder in the New Year's Eve 2019 killing of Monique Baugh. The sentence does not allow for the possibility of parole. Prosecutors say Segura lured Baugh to a phony home showing in a Minneapolis suburb of Maple Grove. She was found shot dead to death in a Minneapolis alley. Investigators say 2 men convicted in the case were part of a scheme aimed at getting to Baugh's boyfriend, who had a feud with a former business associate and drug dealer. Baugh's boyfriend was shot and wounded during an altercation after Baugh was kidnapped. 2 other co-defendants in the case, Cedric Berry and Barry Davis, were previously sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole in the kidnapping and murder of Baugh. How cruel and callous the defendant was to participate in a plan that resulted in the murder of a young woman. It's a tragedy beyond words, as 2 children have been left behind without their mother, Hennepin County attorney Mike Freeman said. Segura did not speak at the sentencing. And I wanted to highlight this article because I understand that there's danger in every industry. There's danger in almost everything that you do. But it just seems like more and more lately, we are seeing more attacks on real estate agents out in the field just trying to do their jobs. It's becoming more and more commonplace. And it's one of those things that we have talked about it. We've talked about, self-defense and understanding your surroundings and things like that. And it doesn't just apply to real estate agents. It applies to everybody. It's something that we've talked about briefly on the show before, but I do like to reiterate it from time to time. Make sure that you are paying attention to your surroundings and paying attention to your gut instincts when it comes to things like this, so that you don't wind up in this exact situation where you get lured to a showing, not expecting to be killed, and all of a sudden, you never know. So unfortunately, that's a little bit of a downer, but I did want to report on that just to remind everybody to always be aware of your surroundings and keep your head on a swivel. Onto a little bit of humor to change things up a little bit. This comes again from the Bad Bathroom Design Department. I don't understand what people are thinking when they do these rehabs and think that this is a good, I mean, this is obviously from like the 70s, you can tell by the finishes, but like who thought this was a good idea when they put this in? I just don't get it. And this one is, I think I grabbed this one from Rob Giuseppe over at Pillar to Post. Guys, this is not what they mean when they tell you to caulk a window. I don't know if you can exactly tell, but those are actual tubes of caulk that are just crammed in there with some caulk, actual caulk thrown over the top of it. That's not how you go about caulking a window. I think it's time to find a new contractor if that's the case. We're going to go ahead and jump into our questions from housing providers around the country, starting with this one on contractors dropping tree limbs on houses. Today's day one of an expected 3-day job to remove 2 major trees that are towering over my house. The company's licensed, bonded, and insured. However, my neighbors texted me a few pictures showing a large limb had come down onto my roof. The roof was completely replaced 4 months ago at a cost of $15,000, so any limbs on the roof would not be good, but the company had 2 instances today of major limbs cut, breaking off, and falling onto my new roof. They expect to be done Monday afternoon. After seeing the massive branches on the roof, I am considering holding any payment until I have the roof inspected. There weren't any visible punctures that I saw yet, but what do I need to do to cover my end other than document the occurrence and take pictures? I'm going to go ahead and show some of the pictures here. Whoops, wrong slide. Change slides. There we go. So you can see in the upper left and in the upper right, those are 2 separate tree limbs that fell onto the house. The center image, you can obviously see one of the trees. There were 2 trees. This is one of the 2 trees that's still standing. And then obviously the 2 bottom images, you can see a little bit of damage there to the roof from the falling trees. I didn't have enough room to include more images. There were more images available, but one of the images did actually show what appeared to be a pretty sizable dent in the roof as a result of the tree branch coming down right at the edge of the roofing structure. Along the fascia and soffit area. So we'll jump back to the question here. Yes, you definitely need to have your roof inspected. There's definitely enough evidence here to warrant having the roof looked at to ensure that no damage was done to your roof as a result of these limb drops. I can see visible damage on the rooftop just from the photos that you posted. Doesn't necessarily mean that there's damage underneath, but you may have some shingles or something like that at the very minimum that need to be swapped out. As I mentioned, I did see that other image and it looked like there was some denting as a result of the limb falling. So yeah, you definitely should have this roof inspected. There's no doubt in my mind that you have enough of a concern here to warrant having the roof inspected. There are a lot of safe ways to drop tree branches. Tie them off and lower them down to the ground being the most common method. Cut them down into smaller pieces so that you don't have a massive branch coming down. You know, there are options for cutting down branches and limbs so that they're not massive and you don't have to drop them on top of someone's brand new roof. Obviously, I have safety concerns about this job, but that's another story for another day. I'm hoping you got a copy of the insurance certificate. You made a mention here that the company is insured, but I'm hoping that you got a copy of their insurance certificate and verified that that insurance was valid by actually calling the insurance company, make sure their insurance was still valid prior to having them start the job. And the reason I say that is because this is exactly why. You would have the exact contact information for their insurance company in the event that you need to go ahead and file a claim. So I would start by talking to the company. Talk to the tree removal company, explain your concerns, and see how they respond. If they're a stand-up company and they said, yeah, things went bad, we understand, you know, let's get the roof inspected, we'll take care of any damages. Great. Sounds like the problem's going to resolve itself. The company will stand up for their services. They understand that not everything goes perfectly every time. And look, things happen. Like, it's not as though it's not the end of the world. Things do happen and this can be fixed. But the company has to be willing to fix it. That's really what it boils down to. And if the company's not willing to fix it, then that's where you get into the situations of now it's time to go to their insurance company, or do you need to file a court claim, or whatever the case may be. You know, but step one is talk to the company. If the company's not responsive, then I would go to the insurance company and try to go that route. And then last but not least, I would probably speak to an attorney and try to go the legal route in court if you have expenses from repairs that you had to have done after the inspection and things of that nature. So as far as having the roof inspected, my recommendation would be have a licensed roofer come out and take a look at it. Maybe a licensed home inspector, but honestly, I think a licensed roofer might be the route to go here. They might charge you a little bit to come out and give you that estimate. Or they may not, because they may just give you the estimate for free, knowing that they're going to get the work, get to do the repair work. So that's an option. But I would bring out somebody licensed, because I think that having someone licensed will mean a lot if you do have to pursue this down the road. At the end of the day, you're going to have to do some work on this, but I have a feeling that you will get paid out. Any damages should get covered either by the company directly or through their insurance or whatever the case may be. Just chase it, follow it up, and make sure that you go all the way to the end on it. And eventually, I think that you will come out on top. On to our next question on how long to sign a lease. Good morning. I need some advice. My tenant's lease is up in 30 days. We discussed that they will extend for 6 months, and I've sent them a new lease for this, but they've not signed that lease as of yet. How long do they have until this needs to be completed? Thank you in advance. So there isn't a time limit per se. At least in the state of New York, I'm not aware of any time limit per se. Basically, the way we handle it is we set a date and time by which it needs to be signed and completed, and if the tenant has not completed it by that point, then it gives us the option of revoking the extension. Generally speaking, I think we're giving 3 business days to sign any sort of a lease or a lease extension, and we give our leases, all of it sent out in a digital format for the most part. So that means that the applicant, or in this case, the tenant, has 3 full days to review the lease, ask any questions that they may have before they have to have that lease signed and turned back in to us. And that's the way that we've been doing it for a long time now, and that seems to work out pretty well. Generally speaking, 3 days should be sufficient. If you're setting it digital, they have literally all 3 days to take the time to read it. So in this instance, they may just be, in this instance, they may just stay the 6 months anyway, even if they don't sign the lease. And if you have any kind of an eviction moratorium in your area, chances are there's not really a whole lot you're going to be able to do about it. You might be kind of screwed in that instance. But realistically speaking, there's one question here that's not answered. Have you reached out to the tenant and tried talking to them? They may just have a concern that hasn't been addressed yet, or they may just not have had a chance to review the document and sign off on it yet. But ultimately, this sounds like a communications issue to me. Reach out to them, talk to them, find out if there's an issue or if there's a concern, or maybe they're thinking they may not want the 6 months. But either way, talking to the tenant is really what you need to do in this instance. That's the only real answer to this question, is talk to your tenant and find out what's going on. And then in the future, set a deadline so that they know how long they have to communicate back to you. Good on you for putting them on either a new lease or an extension. Didn't really say. It looks like you're probably putting them on a new lease. Good on you for going through the paperwork and putting them on the new lease or putting them on an extension. Just making sure that everything is in writing and that you're not just letting it roll to a month to month. Keeping the terms of an agreement clear, especially the dates of an agreement, the start and end dates of an agreement. It's always good practice for landlording. I always recommend making sure that you're on some sort of a lease term and not just a rolling month to month. I personally don't like month to month lease terms. But your mileage may vary. So good on you. Talk to your tenant, and I think that you'll resolve your issue that way. Planning for lost time during a turnover. I always wonder about this and could use some professional input. When you need to do repairs between turnovers, do you charge the tenant responsible for the damage for the vacant time to complete the repair? Oh, I see. Okay. Do you charge the tenant responsible for the damage for the vacant time to complete the repair, or is that time considered cost of doing business? That would be considered cost of doing business. Whenever you have a vacancy in between tenants and you're doing turnover repairs during that time frame, that would be considered a cost of doing business in pretty much every instance that I can think of. So turnover time is going to be a cost of doing business, and you need to be able to account for it when you are considering an investment property for purchase. So when you're doing your deal analysis, what we do is we factor in for vacancy. We factor for a vacancy of about 10% on anything 4 units or less. And essentially what that means is we're planning for a 10% vacancy at any given time, which is less than 1 month of rent at the end of the day. If you're factoring in 10% on, say, a single family, that's less than 1 month of rent. So what you're hoping for is a tenant that moves in and stays for multiple years, which then brings that total vacancy percentage down. But eventually you will have that vacancy, which is why you should still be budgeting for that vacancy all the way along, so that when you do have that vacancy, you're not thinking, oh my God, I need to rush through these rehabs and get a new tenant in there right away. It's not forcing you into a position where you have to act against your own best interest by being forced into a situation where you need to rush. So make sure that you are accounting for a vacancy factor when you're initially examining your investment property deals, so that you know that you're going to be able to afford that vacancy while you're doing that work. The other thing that you need to factor in is both maintenance and CapEx, so that when you know, it's not just the vacancy, because the vacancy is costing you time and lost rents, but it's also costing you money in materials and labor and things like that. So you need to factor in for the maintenance and the CapEx side of the house as well, not just the vacancy. So there's a lot of things that you should be looking at when you're when you're evaluating a rental property deal, so that you know whether or not this is going to be a good deal. I can afford for this deal to be vacant for a month while I'm in there painting and cleaning and whatever. You know, that's all stuff that needs to be factored in when you are actively looking at a property deal. We do have a free deal analyzer over at whatsdrewupto.com. It's no obligation. It's absolutely free. You fill out a form. I think it asks for your name and your email address, and it'll send you an Excel spreadsheet that we use when we do our deal analysis. It's the exact same spreadsheet that we use. It also sends you a video. I think it's a 17-minute video of me doing a live deal analysis, and it actually explains how we use our calculator. So that's a pretty good deal. Check that out today over at whatsdrewupto.com. That pretty much wraps things up for this week's episode of the Ask a Property Manager show. Almost said the Rent Prepper Landlords podcast there, but this is the Ask a Property Management show. Thank you so much for watching. We truly do appreciate it. You can always help us to improve by dropping a question in the comments, either on Facebook or on YouTube, and your question may be picked up and answered in an upcoming episode. If you enjoyed this content, or if I brought some value to your day, do me a favor and hit that thumbs up button. YouTube and Facebook both push videos based on community feedback, so every like, comment, subscribe, and share helps us to grow and reach more people. We'll be back next week on Wednesday, November 24th at 10 a.m. Eastern with another show you won't want to miss. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you next week.